re-edited some of these clips, so they're not exactly in the order that they appear in them. They are in the same order, but they're sometimes much shorter than the clips would be if I just planted them. But I was trying to save time. So yeah, the mosque, the time that I was filming was 1990, and that was the first time the mosque got attacked. So I filmed a failed attempt to demolish the mosque, and this film should have been a warning to the whole country about what would happen if the Hindu fundamentalists were allowed to rise. But the film was never shown widely at the time. We tried to get it on TV, they never allowed us. Finally we won, yeah, I forgot to tell you that part of the story. Starting from Bombay Art City in 1985, this film won a national award. Of course, the slums that I was filming in continued to be demolished. But we also fought, after it won a national award, I submitted the film to national TV to show it, and they refused it. We finally took them to court, saying that how can a government give an award and not allow people to see the film. So we won court case against the government-run TV on the grounds of my freedom of expression and the public's right to information. And then, following this court victory, I applied the same logic to every time if I accidentally won an award, I would be able to use that in court, saying that now they have to show it on TV. And I've succeeded so far. We forced the government to show 6 of my films on TV. So In the Name of God was finally shown on TV, but that was 5 years after the mosque had already been demolished. So at the time when the film would have meant the most and might have changed the course of events had it been seen widely enough, because the film exposes the fact that the people who are going for the demolition are not religious at all. They're interested in political gain and financial gain. Had this understanding been spread widely at the right time, we might have seen a different course of events. But the film was not shown. Finally the mosque was demolished in 1992, a year and a half after I made this, the clip that you just saw.
We have to tell you that in France this wouldn't be possible. I mean, it's not because a film would gain a prize that the TV would accept to screening, so that's a great example.
No, it's a great example, which I'm surprised that at least countries that have some kind of public TV, I don't understand why more people aren't doing exactly that. Anywhere in the world where there is a public TV. In India now the public TV's role is reduced and we have a lot of private channels, and I don't have a leg to stand on when I go to private channels, because they say nobody's going to advertise with your films. So you can't sell Cadbury or anything with showing slum dwellers. But I am able to use this argument with a government-run channel or a government-affiliated channel, because it's my constitutional right.
Okay, so I hope the film...
the rise of religious fundamentalism. But this film is not located in any one incident. I mean, it's not about one particular story like the demolition of the mosque or the Sikh fundamentalists. It's actually looking at the connection between religious violence and patriarchy, which is something that occurred to me while I was filming, not again beforehand. As I started looking, I had gone to Rajasthan in 1987 when a woman was burnt on her husband's funeral pyre. It's called sati, and it's an ancient practice. I mean, it's disputed whether it's an ancient practice or not, but people claim it as an ancient practice. It's certainly a medieval practice where especially Hindu women that were about to be conquered by Muslim rulers, it was considered an act of glory that they died rather than got raped or integrated into Muslim rule. I mean, so rape before, death before honor kind of idea. idea. And this sati, while the satis happen very rarely now in independent India, maybe 3 times since independence, but the glorification of sati still happens. And there are sati temples and things like that. So this film looks at not just sati but many other things, and there are 2 parts in the film. The first looks at what different religions, Hinduism and Islam, has done to women, and the second part looks at what it has done to the male psyche. In this clip you will see a combination of part 1 and part 2 in just 3 or 4 minutes. The title obviously comes from Christianity, and that is, the title is basically the idea that all religions as we know it today come out of patriarchal society and reflect that patriarchal society.
Lionel Soukas, and Lionel discovered this film last evening, and he told me this made him have nightmares because of the situation described. So maybe Lionel, if you want to say some more?
Just about the situation of the woman that we showed yesterday, but you make a very good answer. You say, you know, in America it's the same with Bush. We saw so many crime, and it's for all the world. India is not particular for crime or oppression, nor that other country. That's true. So thanks for your movie.
Yeah, I was just saying that it's really that it's just your geographic location makes you film in that geographic location, but the ideas that are expressed in these films, I think they could be illustrated in every place. Certainly in America, they could easily be. I could have made Father, Son and Holy War in America with almost the same logic.
Maybe Christophe will add something?
Yeah, well, about the clip, I think it's very important to somewhat give a kind of subtext, because you have this, I think, great juxtaposition of the first scenes. This is the anti-Muslim riot of 1993, and explanations, what he did for fun, denial, it's God's will, it's not us. Yeah. And you have the quest for virility, the quest for virility, and you know, the founder of the Hindutva movement, Savarkar, is known as Veer Savarkar, because precisely he's supposed to be the real man, and that's the Indo-European word, by the way. Virility is a word we find.
Veer means both brave, but Veer can also mean seaman, the sea.
Exactly, yeah, exactly. So then you have an explanation of anti-Muslim violence that is very mixed, and comes ideology last in a way. It comes after all this, with this great populist who is Bal Thackeray, the man who spoke by the end. And what some of you may not know is that he died recently, and he was incensed by everybody. I could not find one note of dissent. And hence my question. In the previous film, there was this priest that you mentioned, but whom we did not see, who said that Hinduism is inclusive, and the old man, the blind old man, was an example of this inclusiveness. Yeah. What's left of this inclusiveness today?
Well, I'm an optimist, so I think that the inclusiveness is there in the silent majority. And it's our job to discover that silent majority and give it a voice, which is what I do with every one of my films, try to do, is to discover the fact that there are secular values, there are humanist values that are all pervasive. I mean, you can not go to almost any part of the country without encountering it. It's just that you won't encounter it in the middle class elite and the upper classes, the urbanized elite. That is the beneficiary of liberalized India, and India that now claims to be a superpower. But you will find it definitely amongst the people.
Angel, you want to say something too?
Yeah, I just want to talk about the this sense that you put your finger on just now, and about having, this silent majority of people trying to find their own voice, their own politics, and how the films, I mean, without this spoken word narrative, the voiceover or whatever, you manage to create all of these different positions, so that the film in itself becomes the event within which one can locate themselves and find a voice between all of these different forces. Some of them are being played out, some of them are almost repeating kind of, they're being spoken through almost by these forces, such as maybe it's media forces, maybe it's their Hindu fundamentalist religious priest, maybe it's this idea of being a man. But there's definitely this sense that there are these forces at play, and within it there is this implicated subject, and which is not just about you as a filmmaker, which is about everybody, which is not about the here and elsewhere, which is about very much the here. It's more like, I mean, it's impossible to ask a question about this in a way, but I would like to know about, because this has been developing to more and more over the years in your work, to such an incredible extent that it's even mind-boggling how you manage to find all these different positions. So I'd just like you to talk a little bit more about this, and also the editing.
Yeah, actually it's not mind-boggling, it's just that if you keep your ears and eyes open, you will hear it everywhere, and that's why you never, in most of my films, you never see experts. You never see the theoretician, the academic. They're absent in film. Not that they're absent in real life, but I'm not relying on their testimony or their analysis. I am always looking for those ideas, not necessarily those ideas, but even learning from the ideas that I find at the ground level, because I think that is where the hope in a country like India lies. It certainly doesn't lie amongst the elite, doesn't lie amongst the politicians, and it rarely lies amongst the academics.
But that's also because you are dealing only with the protagonist of a concrete situation, and you don't put something else, like experts or historians or...
No, yeah, I mean, in the sense that there's no need for the expert, because the people can express themselves so well that there's no need. I mean, it's just that we need to listen.
And as Anjali says,
and that's why the documentary to me is the form that I chose, because I'm not creating anything. I'm not actually making something happen. I'm only listening and paying attention.
But that's why the editing of your film is so important, as Anjali was saying, because it's always very clear. I mean, the multiplicity of the point of views, and also the balance between falsification and exactitude. Accuracy would sometimes be difficult to understand for someone who is not in the situation. But thanks to the clarity of your editing and the very strong structure of your film, with no voiceover, it becomes very, very pedagogical for everyone. So it's one of the characteristics of your style.
I do use voiceover once in a while when I fail to connect the dots in any other way, and then I put in the voiceover, because that's critical information that I think people need when they're watching the film. So either I use voiceover or I put intertitles so that people get the connections. But yeah.
And also to end with my remarks about this, but in your film there is also, like in René Vautier's film, very often a very strong sense of equilibrium between disinformation in the mainstream media and the truth coming from the action itself and from the facts. And that's also very interesting to learn to read the press.
Yeah, But if you also would have noticed that the truth, as you call it, and as I would like to call it, no, I'm not embarrassed. I mean, I do tell the truth as I see it, but truth is always subjective. But I'm not. I hope I don't make completely rhetorical films where people already know what the filmmaker is going to say next. I would like people to discover what they think from what they're watching. Although, of course, I'm providing a lot of direction in that. But I don't want the audience to be lazy in terms of waiting to be told now what is the solution to this and all that kind of question. It's really there for people to think about.
Yes, it's the contrary of more contemporary storytelling in a way.
Okay, so we'll move on because we might run out of time before I finish my clips. Narmada Diary, 1995, but actually it's made between 1990 and 1995. It was co-directed with Simantini Duru. And basically it is what it says, it's a diary. We came across this wonderful, non-violent, anti-large dam movement. As I said, from the 80s onwards, India was in the neoliberal camp. The World Bank had put money in to build this huge big dam, because the World Bank always likes to put money in big projects, knowing always that big projects mean big corruption, it means diversion of resources for the elite. But however, this big dam was being opposed by people on the ground. The people who were in the Gujarat area, many of them were of indigenous origin, and people who were small farmers whose land was going to be submerged, who were fighting against the dam, led by Medha Patkar, who is one of the green left revolutionaries, I would call her. I mean, I might have coined that term, but because in a sense using non-violence, using understanding of ecology together with a deep connection with human rights and justice for the people on the ground. So this is a quick look at that. The impact of globalization, the fact of big money coming in for big projects, centralized big projects. Another example is this film, which talks about the factory ships that landed in India and were depriving the local fishing population of their catch, because they would catch huge amounts of fish and there would be no fish left for anybody else. We'll just move forward. These two films, the clips that you saw, also mark the fact that by 1995 I couldn't afford making films, making 16mm films anymore, and switched to video. Even 1990, I was making Father, Son and Holy War and Narmada Diary at the same time, but Narmada Diary was shot on the second camera, which was a high-8 camera. So these two films that you saw were shot on high-8, which was the early sort of amateur video that arrived on the scene.
And so what was the difference for you to switch from one format
to the
the
high-8
other?
didn't look good, but it was cheap. Yeah. And yeah, you could shoot a lot more. Your shooting ratio was, even my shooting ratios kept increasing with time. The first few films were made like 3:1 ratio, 4:1. So they almost, you have to really have a good idea of what you were shooting before you shot it. But with Father, Son and Holy War, even though it was 16mm, we were shooting at a 10:1 ratio, so much more footage. But by the time we got into video, it became even 50:1 or 60:1 ratio of material that you shot, and what you used.
And do you think it's an advantage or a difficulty?
Yeah, it's an advantage and a disadvantage. And I wouldn't say it's a disadvantage. I wouldn't go back to film now. Especially now that the video, digital filmmaking, you can get much better quality, which I haven't done yet because I was still, even my last film was made on high 8 and mini DV, because that film took 14 years. But my next, if and when I shoot, will be on a better digital camera, which nowadays looks better than 16mm. 16mm, you must remember, was always a step brother of 35mm, in the sense of the stepchild, in the sense in India it was always hard to get all the 16mm materials to shoot. And so even now when I look at my 16mm films, my video films actually look technically better.
Oh really? So you
sharper. Not necessarily better, but
you never regret the beautiful textures or colors of the 16?
Well, I regret the editing process. I really loved editing with film. You have much more time to think and everything. And then once you're digital editing, it's a different mindset. I haven't really thought it out so much. But yeah, but we have to get used to it. It can't be more the the people, filmmakers who were in the silent era protested when sound came, they protested when color came. So you can't keep protesting that.
And you learn video by yourself, or did you have?
Yeah.
As usual.
Yeah. So along with the longer films that I made, I started to make very short films. So this is a kind of a political music video. Again, to do with caste system, and it's obviously post what happened in Ayodhya, the Babri Mosque and Temple. So it's a kind of a Dalit, it's a perspective on a Hindu epic called the Ramayana. So it's also a way of telling 5,000 years history in 5 minutes. Want to see one more music video, or you want to talk about this?
Maybe Christophe, with a specialist of this matter.
That's terribly interesting. I think there is first the competition for autochthony that you see there. You know, the Dalits saying we were there before.
Yeah.
And they said that to the Hindu upper caste who are precisely claiming that they were there before.
Yeah.
And there is nothing like Aryan invasions.
Yeah.
We were the autochthonous.
No, actually that has done a metamorphosis. In the 19th century, early 20th century, thanks to people like Max Muller, this idea was very popular in India, that because Max Muller said so, and maybe Nietzsche.
You have to be right.
Yeah, Max Muller said that Indians were Aryans, that the Indian race was an Aryan race, so the elite in India, even the nationalist elite, were very proud of the fact that we're just like the white guy. We are same stock as our colonial masters, so this idea that we are Aryans, we came from the same stock, we came from outside. They developed that and were very proud. In India, you'll see the word Aryan used in many places. It's not even an accident. The Hitler uses the swastika. The idea of the race theory is similar to the caste theory. So when Dalits became conscious and started to question these things, they turned this idea on its head. They started saying that, okay, so you're the Aryans, you came from outside, but we were already here, we're the indigenous people. You subjugated us and made us into the lower caste. In reality, today, even these theories are disputed because there may not have been an Aryan invasion. It may have been nomadic tribes that arrived over a long period of time and settled. The idea it was very popular earlier to think that the Indus Valley civilization was overthrown by the Vedic period, the Vedic people. But I think there is some truth in the idea that there were different races, because in the earliest Sanskrit Vedic texts, you do have an idea of people who are short and snub-nosed and dark-skinned, which seemed to suggest that they were the local populations. So the Dalits basically, as they became mobile, it's not even that it's popular, this idea is not popular, but it's there, you can find it, and it's some writers or some historians like even Kosambi and many others have talked about this idea that, but then after the Hindu fundamentalists were confronted with this, they again changed their story, and they said, oh, we were always here. We are not people who came from outside. We just went for a walk for 5,000 years. We had traveled around the world and came back.
So that's very interesting, I would say, mindset. You have to be there before, the sons of the soil syndrome. Then you have another interesting thing, that is, if the Brahmins or upper castes dominate, it's because they prevent us from really showing what it is. You know? The idea that you behave, the Dalit who can achieve. Same, you have this Eklavya story. The archer, he was an Adivasi, but it's the same story.
Yeah.
You just sever the stem of the one who can really do better than the
warrior caste.
And last but not least, the last theme that is so well encapsulated there is how the upper caste Hindu Dharmaic people used the Dalit for attacking Muslims.
Yeah.
And that's a very, very powerful theme. It's there. It happens. We saw that in Gujarat repeatedly, and you can just promise some good looting, or you can give some money or booze or anything, and get Dalits attacking Muslims. Also because the Mohallas, the slums, the Muslim slums and the Dalit slums are next to next very often. You have an line between, you have a canal, or you have only a railway line, and that's how it happens. So this idea that we will not be your monkey army is, of course, very powerful, because it makes a lot of sense. You must be closer to the Muslims than to the upper caste Hindus, even though you are supposed to be part of their region community.
Yeah.
Great material.
So, okay, so then we come to, this is another music video. This is 1998 when India did nuclear tests. And in 1998, May 1998, after the nuclear tests, many people celebrated on the streets at how we'd become a superpower. And on TV, there was a music video, which was a pro-atom bomb music video, which I was horrified to see being shown on many channels. So I decided to make an anti-bomb music video. And I used a song by Kishore Kumar, who was an old Hindi movie song from the 60s. It's kind of like an Imagine by John Lennon, before Imagine was written. Okay, I'll skip this next one and go forward. This is another 5-minute film, but I think we'll be running out of time. So. Okay, so same time as the earlier clip, 1998, with the nuclear tests, I also began, I had already started making another film in 97, which will be shown tomorrow, I think, but I'll show you a clip now, called Jerry Comrade. But in 1998, I got diverted with the nuclear tests, so I made a film over the next 4 years, basically about nuclear weapons and to some extent about nuclear energy. This film was shot in India, in Pakistan, in Japan, in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and in America. because I wanted to understand the dimensions of, I wanted to understand why America dropped the bombs in the first place. So with this theatre, this is now well into the film. It's a sequence shot in a girls' school in Pakistan. Yeah, the rest of the film is not as goody-goody as this sounds. But by the way, the film will be shown, I think, tonight.
Yes.
Yeah, the rest of the film, all of the film will be shown this evening. So this film, made over 4 years, was then when I tried to show it again. I had trouble because the BJP was still in power when I completed the film in 2002, and they banned the film. I mean, the censor board wouldn't give me a censor certificate. So finally, we ended up in court, and I won my court case after a year. So it became legal for me to show the film in April 2003. By 2004, the Congress government came back to power. The BJP lost the elections, and then I approached television to show the film, because by this time the film had won a national award. It had won an award not only in the Mumbai Festival but also in Karachi Film Festival, and the government they wouldn't let me show it on Indian TV. But before that battle continued, but in Pakistan it came at a time when General Musharraf was trying to liberalize, or trying to show that he was more liberal, and some of the curbs on the media were relaxed. And after this film won an award at the Karachi Festival, a channel in Pakistan invited me to show the film in Pakistan. And when they showed the film, they were a bit worried about what would the reaction be from the rest of the country and the authorities. So they did a panel discussion along with the film, which they packaged the film. They showed it over 4 different days, broke it up into 4 parts, and they also had this panel discussion, which was also broken up and accompanied the film. So that in this panel discussion, there were 2 Pakistani. There was a retired ISI, the chief of the ISI, which was like the CIA, and then there was another defense analyst, and then there was myself and Parvez Goodboy, who's a Pakistani physicist who was opposed to the nuclear weapon. So there were 2 people against the bomb and 2 for the bomb. So I'll just show you an excerpt from that discussion to see how it was received in Pakistan.
And it was on TV? Or
it was on TV, yeah. It was so popular that they repeated the program 3 times in Pakistan. And later, finally, I won my court battle and the film was shown on Indian TV. But Pakistan actually beat us to it. They showed it first. Yeah.
Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to आज डॉक्यूमेंट्री स्पेशल. आई एम तलत हुसैन. नाज़रीन, आज से 7 साल पहले हिंदुस्तान और पाकिस्तान ने बैक टू बैक न्यूक्लियर टेस्ट किए. War and Peace, a documentary that has been done by Anand Patwardhan. Thank you very much for joining us today, Anand. और हमारे दूसरे गेस्ट हैं डॉक्टर परवेज गुडबाई, who is a professor of nuclear physics at Qaeda University. और हमारे तीसरे गेस्ट हैं Lieutenant General retired Asad Durrani साहब, former head of ISI. Thank you very much for joining us. Well, Anand, we've seen the first part of the documentary. आप बताइएगा ये nuclear tests क्यों किए गए?
The Authority Group who just made a film also about nuclear power. So if you have something to remark.
Well, I think Anand's film on the nuclear situation in India is, I mean, when this film was made as well, this was clearly a different time to the time that we're experiencing with the Fukushima power plant and the destruction of the Fukushima power plant and the dumping of the nuclear waste into the sea in Japan. I think our position in relation to making this film is slightly different. I think in India at this time, the relation between nuclear, I mean what Anand describes as nuclear nationalism, this kind of deadly mix of a kind of Hindu fundamentalism mixed with this desire to kind of become more potent as a society, with the development of with the acquisition of nuclear power, is extremely frightening. I mean, I can't immediately draw parallels between our work and this situation. We can, in terms of Japan's history, in relation to after losing the war and Japan's kind of desire to speed up their economy by acquiring 54 nuclear power plants. But one could say the same thing about France, which also has God knows how many power plants, 100 to 200 power plants. And it's a kind of invisible reliance on this energy that's not really, I haven't really heard much about that being discussed in relation to nuclear energy. But maybe Koji wants to say
something. Well, in order to talk about this, I have to go back in time, back to the film on Bhagat Singh. There was this moment in this scene which really struck me. So when you talk to the Sikh fundamentalists and you confront them with the fact that Bhagat Singh wrote this pamphlet, this text, Why I'm an Atheist, and what you show is what happens. What you show is the types of denial and the types of rewriting, the instant rewriting of evidence. So when you show them, they instantly say, oh, that was written by Congress. Or they say, well, he was religious. So there are these immediate contradictions that emerge. And so what I was struck with there is this is a method of showing what happens when you show evidence. So that the film, so that us, the spectators, are in this relationship of watching a kind of fundamentalist spectatorship, where we watch how fundamentalists respond to evidence. In other words, when you confront, religious enthusiasts with evidence, the evidence doesn't instantly create a response whereby they say, yes, that's a very good point. It's quite the reverse. It does what the Americans call doubling down. So they insist further on their belief. They don't give up their belief. They insist upon it even more. And this mechanism by which you show how evidence does not clarify a position but enforces it, shows that religion does not yield to contradiction and does not yield to rationality. That religion has to be analyzed almost by religious means, because religion doesn't recognize, religious faith and religious belief do not recognize non-religious arguments. On the contrary, a non-religious argument only proves a religious belief. And this becomes very interesting in relation to the girls, where they after the demonstration of the debate and after the analysis, they talk about how politicians inflame desires. And so we begin to understand that religion is a kind of inflammatory discourse which only amplifies itself, rather than, and it, as it were, religion can never be toned down. It can only exaggerate itself and amplify itself. And this, I think, is compelling because you show the links between religious fundamentalism and nuclear nationalism, in that they both share this discourse of inflammation. And so I guess the question then is the role of cinema in showing how that functions. And if you could say a bit about what documentary does when it shows that documentary evidence has its reverse effect. A long-winded way of getting something which recurs in your films.
Yeah. Well, it's hard to know exactly how people receive film, but I think I have enough evidence. I keep getting mails from people who watch the films to know that they do make a difference on a micro scale to people who watch them and start a process of thought. The one thing that I also wanted to point out about War and Peace, for those who haven't seen it, is that it is, while it started out as a film about nuclear weapons, it also got into the question of nuclear energy and nuclear power, because in fact the two are so integrally linked. I don't know how much people know about the Indian nuclear energy sector, but India has had a nuclear energy sector right almost from independence onwards, and to this day they make only about 2.5% energy comes from nuclear, because it's so inefficient, and they spend huge amount of money to make this 2.5% electricity. But the real reason for having nuclear energy is that it's a dual technology. Once you have nuclear energy, you can make the plutonium which you can use for weapons. So it gives you the capability of being a nuclear armed state. So even while India never stated that in the early days, they kept this nuclear project going, not so much to make electricity, but to also be able to make weapons. But today, with the nuclear deal with the United States, the nuclear program in India is trying to expand on an exponential scale, and they are building reactors like Fukushima on the coastline. And one of them is a French reactor, by the way. The Ariba plant is going to be the world's biggest nuclear plant on the western coast, very near Bombay. If anything goes wrong, Bombay will be destroyed. And it's on the coastline. It's a failed technology. Ariba has already gone over budget in Finland, where they're trying to build a similar plant. The costs have gone double. Apart from costs, nuclear energy today is the most expensive form of energy. It makes absolutely no sense economically to go nuclear today. But countries are doing it, and countries like India are doing it so that they have this dual technology, and because they're seduced by the idea of electricity.
There is a question or remark in the audience on the other side.
Excusez-moi, je vais m'exprimer en français, si vous pouvez. J'ai deux questions très courtes à poser à M. Patwardhan. D'abord, je le félicite bien sûr pour son œuvre. Ensuite, puisque je vois qu'il est anti-nucléaire, je voudrais savoir comment il se sent dans le pays le plus nucléarisé du monde, en France, par habitant, puisque la France est le pays le plus nucléarisé. Et ensuite, qu'est-ce qu'il pense du voyage en février 2013 de M. François Hollande en Inde, où il est allé essayer de placer 2 EPR qui sont en construction dans une région où il y a déjà la contestation antinucléaire.
There is a huge protest against nuclear plants. While we started, we were part of an anti-nuclear movement. We were very tiny. We were these people who were against the bomb philosophically, and because we knew what the bomb meant. But today, the larger movements against the bomb, against nuclear energy in India, are being done by the people on the ground. The fisher people who are being displaced in both Kudankulam and in Tamil Nadu, where a Russian reactor is being built, and in Maharashtra, where a French reactor is being built. So it's a big, very powerful movement. But the government is very adamant that they want to go through with this nuclear deal. So I don't know if people are part of the anti-nuclear movement. We would hope that you are able to stop Ariba plant in its tracks.
Yeah, I think we have to move on to your last thing because it's so important.
Okay, so we will now go to Jaivin Comrade, which is the film that was begun in 1997 and took 14 years to make. It was completed about a year and a half ago. It's a 3-hour film, so this is only a few minutes from that. It's about the caste system. It's about caste system, but mainly concentrated in the state of Maharashtra, which is where Dr. Ambedkar, who was the leader of the people who are considered untouchable, who now call themselves Dalits, which means the oppressed. Dr. Ambedkar was born here, and it remains an inspiration for the whole country, for the Dalit population and for those who have begun to understand that caste is the most horrific thing that exists in India today. I was just going to say the good news is that we've come to the end of clips. Yeah, and yeah, I just wanted to follow up on what Koji was saying about the religious opposition to an idea, that people will not shift their position from one to the other, no matter what evidence you present, no matter what reason you can present. So it's a religious resistance which goes beyond religion, because it is a resistance that you can see in the nuclear world for sure. You can see that people are religiously tied to the nuclear project. In the face of Fukushima, in the face of, there's only, I think Germany is the only country that has actually reacted to Fukushima. It's probably the only country that actually said, we're going to stop reliance on nuclear energy. And even the right wing in Germany is sort of joined hands with the Green Party on this front. But everywhere in the world you see the opposite, complete denial. India certainly is in complete denial and is well on the path towards buying all the second-hand Chernobyls they can find. So also, I'm sure France is in that position also. I don't know if France has stepped back from the nuclear brink. What happens when people like that watch a film like this? I think they probably have some kind of defense mechanism that prevents them from looking at it.
At the same time, liberation can come sometimes from religion as well, and the Dalits you're showing us are Buddhists, many of them, and Ambedkar has converted to Buddhism to liberate from some religion and embrace another kind of religion, his people, and I think that's very interesting product. There is also an emancipatory potential in religion. We may return to that, but if I may ask one question that really turned to be personal in the end. When I saw this film, which is a fantastic film, I was of course struck by the title, Jai Comrade. And comrade is of course a communist word, and Ambedkar was dead against the communists. So I wondered, what the hell is this collapse of these two, I would say, expressions reflecting, and that's my question, in fact. You mentioned the left repeatedly several times, and you even coined this green left activist phrase. But what is the left, which is so much associated with the communists in India, thinking of your films? And how does the Queen's Party of India, or the two, CPI and CPIM, and their intellectuals consider about your films, especially when you look at caste as such an important problem for India, and they have ignored caste for so long, and that was the problem for Ambedkar. There is only a class system in India, which is communist. So I think it will be interesting, because the title of the last film reflects this question, to tell us more about your relation to these people.
We have several questions in one question, so I'm going to lose track, but I'm going to try and keep track so you can remind me. Firstly, about Dr. Ambedkar. For those who don't know, Ambedkar was a great scholar who despite being a Dalit, was able to get an education, went to Columbia University, got a PhD, came to London School of Economics, got another doctorate, and became a lawyer as well. And he was perhaps the best read amongst all Indian political leaders of the time. And definitely amongst this time, there's nobody reads anything. Dr. Ambedkar is complex in the sense of his understanding of communism and the left. He is a critic of the left, of communism, and he even wrote a book about that. But he's also incorporated a lot of left ideas in his own thinking. So he's very much a product of the Enlightenment of, say, people like maybe John Stuart Mill and many other people, Fabian socialists. So the left thinking is very much embedded in his understanding of the world. So you can't call him, he's certainly not an anti-communist in that sense.
Yeah.
But, the communist project of the left, what should have been, for the communists it's crazy that they didn't ally with the Dalit movement much more closely, because if you are a communist, how could you ignore the poorest of the poor, the most oppressed sections, and not learn from what they were saying and what Dr. Ambedkar was saying? So the fact that the communist movement on the left and Dr. Ambedkar went into contradiction, to some extent they did, and that is the tragedy. I think that had they not done that, then we would have seen a different India. The other thing is that Dr. Ambedkar is also very much a constitutionalist. He's the author of the Indian Constitution. So his idea of change is not armed revolution. It is about enshrining rights in the Constitution, making sure that society changed through the law and through society and through agitation, of course, but also that the law must be there. So that is sometimes in contradiction with those from the left or extreme left that believe armed struggle. You have to overthrow the system. You're not going to be within it and work within the Constitution. So there are these tensions. Anyway, I won't talk about Jai Bhim Comrade title till everyone sees the film, because it won't make sense. It's tomorrow. Jai Bhim Comrade is tomorrow. And now I come to the second thing that you said. So one was Jai Bhim Comrade, and I've forgotten.
Religion and Buddhism.
Yeah, and Dr. Ambedkar converted with thousands of his followers from Hinduism to Buddhism as a way to assert that this was a religion that oppressed us for centuries and we're walking out. It's quite instructive, the fact that he didn't advocate atheism, although he chose a religion that is essentially atheist. He chose Buddhism, which doesn't talk about God. Buddhism talks about the improvement of man on earth, then how can we better ourselves? So Buddhism, if at all, is a religion. It's much more a philosophy. It's much more a means of human beings bettering themselves. And so Ambedkar chose Buddhism out of the greatest rationality. And he didn't even choose the Buddhism as he found it. He rejected some aspects of Buddhism as, his idea was that this is not what the Buddha meant, or this is not really the Buddha at all. Like the theory of reincarnation, which to him sounded irrational. I mean, there's no evidence for it. So he doesn't go around looking for the next Dalai Lama to be born in some village. He says, no, there's no reincarnation. So he's taking Buddhism as he likes it. In very much the same way that Gandhi took Hinduism very much the way he liked it. He never certainly supported traditional Hinduism. He reinterpreted it. So I would consider both of them liberation theologists and people who were bringing their own ethics into what they called that religion. But Ambedkar thought that if he's going to get his people to walk out of Hinduism, he had to have another religion, otherwise people wouldn't do it, and people need to replace, they needed a community, and that community could be provided by conversion to another religion. So he chose the most rational one he could find.
Il est presque 3 heures déjà, c'est incroyable. Est-ce que quelqu'un voudrait se charger d'une question dans la salle, une avant-dernière question?
Yeah, so in present day India, documentary as a medium, how strong or weak do you feel it is in reaching the masses or getting it shown to people? Like how much screenings you have it in India?
I can't speak for every documentary, but I can talk about mine. Yeah, by and large, no, I can speak for every documentary that it's extremely, even though today the documentary medium, because the technology has become much easier than it was, and accessibility is not a problem. You can get small cameras, cheap cameras that shoot very good quality video. Digital cameras which you can get, which are very affordable, and you can edit on your own computer. So hundreds and thousands of films are being made because the technology has changed that way. But the real problem is where are these films shown? So there are very few outlets for documentary cinema. If you're not part of the government and if you're critical of the government, it's even more difficult. So I don't think that has significantly changed since the time that I began making films. Film festivals internationally have become spaces where documentary filmmakers aspire to show their films. So the films are often shown in festivals and go into a circuit, but they rarely are shown to the people that they're about. There are once in a while you find filmmakers doing that, but it's not a common thing that the films are used well or often in India to go back to the people that you made the films about. And that activity it's a major task to actually spend as much energy showing films as you do making films.
But that's also why you will put your film online.
No, it's not that. That's also why I'm as much a projectionist as I am a filmmaker. Apart from being a lawyer, I have to go to court all the time. But I spend a lot of time showing these films because there is no ready-made mechanism in India to show these films. On the net is okay, but on the net is a good idea in the future. But as yet in India, very few people have computers. I mean, only the elite have computers. So internet access and all that for long format films. I mean, what you find on YouTube is usually very short films. So some of my short films I've already put on YouTube.
But it's important for the young generation.
Yeah, but I'm trying to find out. I'm trying to eventually I will have free streaming on my website so that people can watch the films, and I might put a PayPal button for those who want to contribute if they feel like it, but it's not necessary to contribute to watch it. So that's my future. One of the future projects is to make the films accessible.